Hello students, welcome to the answer writing program. Today we are starting with the international relations, that is a topic of GS2. We'll be dealing with these three topics: India and its neighborhood relations, effect of policies and politics of developed and developing countries on India's interest, and the third one would be Indian diaspora. So we'll be discussing three questions, two static question on these three topics and one question from the current affair. So let's take a overview of these three questions. The first question is about India-Bangladesh relations, how they have got strengthened up in the past 2 decades, but still there are some issues. So we have to deal with this question. Next is Indian diaspora, the challenges with this, and we have to write some measures for this improvement. Next comes the recently passed Act, Digital Personal Data Protection Act 2023. What is the concept of data federalism and what are the various implications of this act? So let's start with the first question. India-Bangladesh has witnessed the strengthening of their relations in last 2 decades. However, there are still cardinal issues to be addressed. Explain. So the question is asking about two things. In the first part, it is asking about the India-Bangladesh relations had got strengthened up. But in the next stance, it is asking about still there are some issues in the relations of India-Bangladesh. So these will consist of two body parts. These will be our two headings in the main body. Then the keyword or the directive word is explain. It means we have to dwell deep into these two topics, that how these got strengthened up. We have to substantiate with the data, with the facts, to prove our points, to prove our arguments. And the next we have to substantiate how the issues are there, how some obstacles are there. So let's start with the intro. In introduction, you can write about the background of the India-Bangladesh relations, that how India supported Bangladesh with the formation of Mukti Bahini during the Liberation War. In 1971, which transformed East Pakistan into the present what we say as Bangladesh. So this can be the background in the introduction, or you can also write about the relations of the India-Bangladesh, that India was the first country to recognize Bangladesh as an independent state. Or you can also write about that India and Bangladesh share the common history, common heritage, common civilization, common culture. So these ways you can start your introduction. Okay, so let's move to the body. In the first part, we have to tell how the relation has got strengthened up in the last 2 decades. Like what are the notable advancements into the India-Bangladesh relations. Any bilateral relations can be measured into the various dimensions like the diplomatic ties, political ties, economic, cultural, human rights, humanitarian ground, financial assistance, conflict resolutions, etc., etc. So these ways you can measure the dimensions, that whether their relationships have improved or not. So first one in this case can be the economic ties. So the India-Bangladesh relations, yes, have strengthened up. The economic ties got boosted. How? These ways. Like the trade, the bilateral trade has seen substantial growth. Now, India has emerged as the largest trading partner of Bangladesh in South Asia. Next, Bangladesh is India's 4th largest export destination. Or you can also write the data like Bangladesh is one of the major destination for agri trade, India's agri trade. So this way you are substantiating that how trade has got improved, how the economic ties has got improved. Next comes the connectivity. trade has got improved or strengthened up, or the bilateral trade has seen the substantial growth because the connectivity was improved. Connectivity was enhanced. You can write example about Maitri Setu and Chilahati Haldibadi rail link. So you can write about that how connectivity has got strengthened up. Then line of credit. India financially assists Bangladesh to address the infrastructural lacunas. Means the India has given the financial assistance to Bangladesh for the infrastructure developmental project, for the implementation of the transport, power and various ICT enabled projects. Next comes the high impact community development programs. Means the India has taken several initiatives or has invested in the projects which are of the high impact, which impacts the community, which is specially for the community development, like in the case of education, health, water management, etc. So these ways you can say that economic ties had got strengthened up. Next comes the energy ties. India helped Bangladesh to address the energy security or to address the energy loopholes. India has emerged as largest, or we can say net exporter of electricity power supply to Bangladesh. So this way India has helped in regional energy stability as well as security. Next comes the security and defense. Defense cooperation enhance the defense capabilities, like the collaborative military exercises like Sampriti exercises and the Milan exercise. Then lastly, conflict resolution. As we have seen in the case of Land Boundary Agreement 2015, where the long-standing land border disputes or the issues was resolved and the multiple exchange and the transfer of the enclaves happened at that time. So this way they have resolved the conflict in an amicable way. So these were some points where you can write your arguments that these are the points where we have seen the notable advancements between India and Bangladesh. Next heading would be obstacles in the India-Bangladesh ties or the relations, or you can say some cardinal issues are there. First one is Teesta water dispute. Again, this is a long-standing dispute. Bangladesh is dissatisfied with insufficient water allocation of Teesta. Although the treaty has got agreed upon, but still it did not materialize because of the opposition of the West Bengal government. Then comes the influx of the illegal migrants. Human trafficking issues is there. Then smuggling of cattle, drug, arms, fake currency, gold, etc. is there. All these issues are due to the porous nature of Indo-Bangladesh border. So yes, these are some obstacles. Then comes the insurgency. Again, due to the porous nature, the extremist group or the terrorist group, they wanted to expand their bases, so they infiltrate in the Indian territory. Lastly, there is a China influence. China factor is there. China is rising its presence in the Bangladesh due to its Belt and Road Initiative. China is asking Bangladesh to dredge the whole river course of Teesta and use the reclaimed land for the development of the infrastructural projects via the loans taken from China. So this impacts the national security or the regional security, this highly or the rising presence of China in the neighborhood. So there are some obstacles which we have to work upon. Now the question is only asking about the explain and these two aspects. And already we are writing some challenges. So what in the conclusion we can do is, either we can summarize that it can be aptly defined as the golden phase or the Shonali Adhyay in the India-Bangladesh relations, that it is going very smoothly and very friendly. Or you can write the way forward, because you have already write the challenges, so you can write some measures on the basis of those challenges where we have to improve upon. First, because the water dispute is there, so we have to take effort to resolve the water disputes, to mutually talk and build trust on each other's government. Then we have to enhance the border management to stop these things, like to stop the illegal migrant, to stop the smuggling of the cattle, drugs, fake currency, arms, gold, etc. Next comes the constructive dialogue should be there to address the Chinese influence or the rising presence in the neighborhood. So these are some way forward. So this way we have completed the first answer. Let's see the model answer. In model answer, they have written the introduction about the Mukti Bahini and they have shared some common history in this. Then notable advancement, trade, connectivity, line of credit, high impact, energy. This we have already dealt. Then obstacle is Teesta water, illegal migration, drug trafficking, terrorism, China factor. In this question, you have the various places you can put examples, quotes, case studies, as many as can. So these are the very apt question to write more and more information. Then lastly, either you can just conclude or you can write the way forward. Resolving issues between India and Bangladesh. We have to resolve the water dispute, human trafficking. We have to address the China factor. So let's see the second question. Indian diaspora has been contributing greatly in India's growth and promoting its interest in their host countries, but they can't be taken for granted. So this is the context the question is setting. In this context, discuss some of the challenges faced by the Indian diaspora and suggested measures. So there are two body parts. We have to tell about the challenges faced by Indian diaspora, and the second body would be measures. But as the question is setting the context that yes, Indian diaspora has greatly impacted in the India's growth and promoting its ties. So it's good that you start with this thing. You are also setting the context in the main body part, that how diaspora helped in contributing India's growth and promoting its interest. So this would be the first heading, this would be second, and this would be third. So let's start with the introduction. In introduction, you can write about the basic definition of the Indian diaspora, that what is the Indian diaspora. It is a general term used to address people who have migrated from India to the other countries. Or you can write some of the contextual intro or whatever they are being regarded as, that they are also the richest minorities in the developed countries. Indian diaspora. They also act as a bridge builder between the host countries and the home countries. Or you can write some data that according to 2019 UNDP report, Indian diaspora is the largest diaspora in the world. It is approximately 100 million population. So this way you can introduce your answer. Next comes the contribution of the Indian diaspora. Indian diaspora contributes in the economic ways. They transfer the technology or through the cultural diplomacy or the soft power. Let's see the economic relations of the Indian diaspora with the home country. The remittances sent by them, they bridges the gap of BOP. Also, these investments help the country's development. So you can write some data that more than $100 billion came as remittances in 2022. Next, economic is investment through FDI and FPI. They invest in India. This boosts the economic growth, job creation, and multiple infrastructure development projects they can be funded. Next comes the technology and the innovation transfer. Many NRIs or the Indian origin people they are working in a very cutting edge technology. So with the collaboration with their Indian counterparts, they can transfer or share the knowledge and the innovation back to India. So this way they smoothen up the ties, and this way they contribute their home country. Next is cultural diplomacy. They boost their culture by celebrating their festivals, by celebrating their cultures, traditions in their host countries. So this way they boostens or this enhances the cultural diplomacy via this diaspora. Next is enhancing the India soft power, like the initiatives like yoga at the multilateral forums and in the various other countries. This enhances the soft power of India. Secondly, very like multiple Indian origin people are there at the very top level position in the other countries, like say the example of Rishi Sunak in the prime ministerialship of UK. So when these Indian origin people are there at the top level position, so this enhances the political clout of the India at the international forums, like in the case of United Nations, UN. So this way, this Indian diaspora contributes to the India's growth and promoting its interest in the host countries. But the next part is, but they cannot be taken for granted. Means we have taken them for granted. Means we are not redressing their grievances. Means there is no clear policy with regard to the handling or how we have to engage with the Indian diaspora abroad. So means there are some certain challenges, we have to write that. First is no proper grievance redressal. Means if they face any issue abroad, if they go to the embassies, there are no proper grievance redressal mechanism, or if there are delays in this process. Next comes the country or the region specific problems, like the Indian diaspora or the Indian migrants which go to Gulf countries. They face the discriminatory policies, like in the case of Gulf countries, there is a kafla system. So this is discriminatory in nature. And the second, Indian diaspora faces the racial discrimination in the countries like USA and UK. Next comes no clear policy on diaspora. Instead of the huge socio-economic development they propose, the Indian diaspora contributes to the huge socio-economic development. Still, there is no clear policy on this diaspora, how we have to engage with those people abroad. If there are some issues, how we have to deal with. How we have to deal with the respect to the dedicated offices for their grievance redressal. Then, no centralized database. Still, the people who have registered in the regional offices or the consulates, there is no centralized database. If we match our Indian data with respect to the foreign embassy's data abroad, there is a mismatch. It means we do not even directly know that how many people are of the Indian origin are there in foreign countries. So this creates the issues. So there are some challenges. So the next question part is the measures to counter the challenges faced by the Indian diaspora. So whatever there are the challenges, if we correct them, so these are some positive measures. Like we have to create an authentic database, because it will be easy in the identification of the Indian people then. Next, dedicated policy for the diaspora, for the proper guidelines, for the regulations, for how we have to engage with those people. Next comes is the skilling of the potential worker. We have to skill the potential migrant workers so that they will also get the opportunity to diverse their work base. Instead of going to the Gulf countries, they can have like the various options. They can go to the East Asian nations, because this is the emerging market also. Next is we have to tackle the discrimination. There should be the dedicated offices for the grievances redressal. So this way we dealt with the measures part. So in conclusion, what we can write, because we have already dealt with everything, we can write something about the conclusion and something about the summary, that they play the very vital role. So all the challenges should be dealt in a proper manner so as to enhance their role in our Indian economy and the India's growth, and also their well-being abroad. So let's see the model answer. They have said about the Indian diaspora, the definition, and Indian diaspora consists of two things, NRIs and the PIOs. NRIs, they are the Indian citizens but not residing in India, and PIOs are the persons of Indian origin and now they are the citizen of the other countries. So these are some contribution. Bridge knowledge gap, challenges faced by this, no centralized, lack of proper grievance redressal. So measures, skilling, tackling this, dedicated policy, create an authentic database. So conclusion, just summarizing the answer. So this way we have completed the second question as well. Next comes the third question. In the context of recently introduced Digital Personal Data Protection Act 2023, discuss the concept of data federalism and write the various implications of this act. So prior attempting this question, you should have been aware of Digital Personal Data Protection Act 2023, that what are the various provisions, what are the negatives, what are the positives. So everything you have to be aware of. Comes to the question, we have to first discuss about the data federalism, and second you have to write about the implications. Implications, we have to write both the positives and the negatives of the act. And the question is simply discuss. So we have to discuss in detail that what are the various dimensions in which it has the positives or the negative implications. So let's see the intro. In intro, you can start with Digital Personal Data Protection Act. What it aims for? It addresses the privacy concern of the individuals or of the citizens in the era of the rapid technological advancements. You can just relate the context that for what purpose this act has come up. You can write this context with respect to this. Or you can also write about that it has been recently introduced. This act has been recently introduced to tackle the privacy issues or the concerns of the citizens. That's it. Next comes the body part. In the first part, we have to discuss about or we have to tell about the data federalism. Because this is a 10-marker question, we'll just write few lines on this and we have to write upon the implications. Data federalism. You know the meaning of federalism? Distribution of power between the national unit and the subnational unit. National means the central government and the subnational means here in India we say as the state governments. So the data federalism means the distribution of authority and responsibility of data management, data protection policies would be between the central government and the state government. So now the policies for the data protection can be made by the central government as well as the state government. So now they have the segregated responsibilities and the authorities on which they can make the policies. Now where the data will be stored, where the data can be analyzed, the data analytics part, everything, the responsibilities and the authority will be distributed between the central and the state government. So this is the context or the concept of the data federalism. Now we have to be aware about the Digital Personal Data Protection Act 2023, that it is for the privacy protection of the individuals or the citizens. There are certain provisions you have to be aware of, like data principle is there, then data fiduciary is there, data processor is there. There are some provisions with respect to the transfer of data abroad. There are some provisions where the government can exempt the user's consent before sharing the data. So these things you have to be aware of. Now let's see what are the implications, what are the positive things of this Data Protection Act. First, we are taking the stakeholder approach here. That what are the implications on the citizens, what are the implications on the government, what are the implications on other stakeholders as like businesses, MSMEs, etc. So what are the positives implication on citizen? Now the citizen will have the right to access the information. Now the citizen have the right to consent before any other stakeholder like the government or the businesses. If they want to use the personalized data of the individual, they have to ask for the consent of the citizen. If the citizen assures that okay, you can use that, then in only that case the businesses or the government can use the user's information. So right to erase, if the user want right to forget or right to erase own personal data, then other stakeholder has to do that. So this way the privacy is ensured, the protection, security, safety of the individual is assured via this act. Next comes is the positive implications on the government. If the government will ask the user data, and if all the policies are now transparent that okay, we are using this particular data of this particular user, so this is a more transparent. Now the public trust will got enhanced or also got boosted. So this is the aspect, one of the pillar of the good governance. Next comes on the other stakeholders, what will be the positive impact? Like in the case of the businesses, again the business or the private partner and the user, the interaction is more transparent. They have to comply by the legal aspects of the Data Protection Act. So now again the interaction will be more transparent, and now the businesses can invest more on this data protection solution, data protection policies. Now they come up with the multiple solutions for the data protection, and the IT sector will again get a boost for after this. Next comes the negative implications. Negative implications on the data federalism. There is a provision of the establishment of Central Data Protection Board. Now the Central Data Protection Board will have the control over all state collected data. So this goes against the federal concept of data federalism. Next comes, as this will be the mandatory, the legal and the financial cost or the financial burden will be enhanced in complying all these aspects with the businesses. So compliance burden on the businesses. Next comes the potential intrusion into the citizens' privacy. There are the vague terms like lawful purposes. In the garb of vague terms, government can extract the user's data without its consent. So again, this can be misused and it's a potential intrusion into the citizens' privacy. Next comes the conclusion. What you can write in the conclusion? In conclusion, you can write that there should be some balanced approach between the extraction of the user's data and also to take care of the user's safety or the privacy, and extraction of the user data for the maintaining, monitoring, evaluation of the policies for the betterment of the society. So there should be some balance. So this way we have completed the third answer also. Now see the model answer. Model answer, it starts with the basic issue, what this will address. Then comes the concept of data federalism. This model answer is defining in a very detailed manner that what are the principles of the data federalism, this thing. And in the model answer, you will also get to know about what are the various provisions of the Digital Data Protection Act 2023. So you can read from here that what are the key definitions in that, like data principle. If I am the user and I am logging into Google, so I am the data principal. My data is word as data. Data fiduciary is Google because it is admitting my data. So Google will be the data fiduciary. If Google has the capabilities to extract and process the data, then Google is only the data processor. Otherwise, if Google just tells the purpose, for this purpose we want to extract the data, and gives to the third party to process the data, so the third party will be the data processors. Then right of individuals, access to information, right to consent, right to erase. There is the provision for the establishment of the Data Protection Board. There are some provisions for the cross-border data transfer. Then financial penalties, who will not comply with the provisions of the Act. Then there are some exemptions on which we have already talked about. Then the positive implications or the negative implications. And finally, we have to deal with the balanced approach in the Data Protection Act, which ensures the individual privacy rights are upheld while still allowing for the legitimate data processing necessary for the various lawful purposes. So this way we have completed our discussion. Thank you and have a nice day.